What's up, cooks? Welcome to the Card Kitchen. I am the Card Chef, and welcome to part 2 of the custom mini set that I've been working on. Part 1 has already posted, so go check that one out if you haven't seen it already. The first one we did EX Pokemon, we did 5 of them. Now we are doing a bunch of baby Pokemon. That's right, baby Pokemon are all going to look very similar. They have been in the paper TCG before and looked very similar to how they are going to look here, at least in the style that they have been built in. If you guys want to build your own custom cards, I encourage you to go to any of the websites that you can do custom Pokemon cards on, build them up, and then join my Discord and post them in the Discord. And what I'll do is every single week is I'll grab a handful of them and review them on YouTube. I'll post them in a video and I'll talk about them all. And so I think that would be a really cool thing that I can do with the community, is share out your custom builds as well. So join the Discord in the description below. So let's get into these baby Pokemon. Just to give you an idea of how these baby Pokemon work, they all have 30 HP, they all have 0 retreat, and they all have 0 attacks, but they all have abilities. So basically they're very vulnerable, but can be very good in the sense of helping out certain decks and archetypes in the game. The first one I have is Pichu, which is of course the baby Pokemon for Pikachu. This guy evolves into Pikachu, who eventually evolves into Raichu. Now your Pikachu will not be able to evolve from this in the game because they're both basics, but that's the way baby Pokemon have always traditionally worked in the paper TCG. So the ability I gave this one is called Pika Nest. It says this Pokemon is considered as 3 Pokemon on the bench. Now it doesn't take up 3 slots, but it's considered 3 Pokemon. So basically, the reason why I gave it this effect is because I feel like the original Pikachu EX, which was one of, if not the best card in the game, way back in the day when this game first launched, it has seen basically no love and is not really that strong anymore. But this would help to increase that play rate and make that card a little bit better, because right away, even if you don't get your bench full, just by having one Pichu on the bench, even though it's super vulnerable, your Pikachu is set up to start doing a 90 damage right away, because as you know, Pikachu EX, the one from Genetic Apex, does 30 damage for each electric Pokemon on your bench. The cool thing about this too is if you play this plus 2 other electric type Pokemon, your Pikachu would actually have would be able to do 150 damage, because it would be considered 5 Pokemon on your bench, 1 Pichu and 2 electric. If you have 2 Pichu on your bench and 1 extra electric, that means you have 7 Pokemon on your bench that are all electric types, which means you would do 7 times 30, so I believe that's 210 damage with your Pikachu EX, which would be super duper strong. But again, this Pokemon is super vulnerable. One shot from a Hitmonlee, see you later. And not only that, if it got Sabrinaed out, or if you had to start with it in the active, very vulnerable. And your Pikachu EX is already very low HP, so I do feel like it is balanced, but I'm sure you will let me know in the comments below. The next one is Elekid, and Elekid is the baby Pokemon of Electabuzz and Electivire. Again, like I said, all these Pokemon have 0 retreat and 30 HP with no attacks. So let's just get right into the abilities as we go along. This one is called Electric Barrier, and it says flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is paralyzed. So very similar to how Hypno and Grafefe work. Hypno works with sleep. Grafefe works with poison. This works with paralyze, and paralyze is the best special condition in the entire game. It basically stops your opponent from attacking or retreating for a single turn, and there's no way to get out of it. So unless you have like a Loomberry or you're an Arceus. So this I think would be really cool, be very strong, and this could also be played in a bunch of decks, not just electric decks, to help those decks out. So I think this would be very cool, and this honestly might be one of the more powerful baby Pokemon on the list. The next one is Magby. So Magby is the baby Pokemon of Magmar and Magmortar. And its ability is called Lava Floor. It says flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is burned. So yes, we already have in the game right now, like I said, Hypno, who does it for sleep, Grafefe, who does it for poison, and then the Elekid that I just showed you does it for paralyzing, and now we have one that does it for burn. I think it would be cool, and I'm sure we're going to get one for burn and one for paralyze down the line, whether they're baby Pokemon or not. So I think it's viable that these abilities would exist, considering they already exist for sleep and poison in the game as we speak. So let's move on to the next one, which is Mime Jr. Yes, Mime Jr. says Coin Trick, and this guy, of course, is the baby Pokemon of Mr. Mime, and Mime Jr. has Coin Trick, and it says flip a coin. If heads, remove a random energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. So it's not just the active, it's not just the bench. You don't get to choose, it's random, but you do get to randomly remove a energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon, which I think is pretty decent and can be worked out very well in energy control decks with things like Porygon Z, Beedrill. I don't know if anyone ever will play Pharaoh or Mawile, but those are cards that remove energy as well. And of course, Team Rocket Grunt. So I think this could be a pretty decent addition to those types of control decks, allowing you to stop some of the rampant as well that's going on in the format, because the majority of energy control right now is basically removing energies from your opponent's active Pokemon. This will allow you, even though you can't control it, possibly hit something on the bench that your opponent is focusing on. Like if you're ever playing against a Druddigon, your Beedrill and your Team Rocket Grunt will never come into effect until after your opponent brings out the Pokemon into the front. So I think this would be pretty cool. And then we have Smoochum, who is the baby Pokemon of Jinx. And Smoochum has the ability Stolen Kiss. Flip a coin. If heads, put a random card from your opponent's hand back into their deck. So you're not completely discarding it and completely removing it from play. What you're doing is you're just taking it from their hand and putting it back into their deck, and then their deck will shuffle. So putting them back a little bit. This would be very good for, again, another control element, another control type of deck, which would be hand control with things like Glameow, Persian, Mars, Red Card, things like that would make those types of decks really cool and really interesting and add a new element to the game in general. And then the next one we have is Tyrogue. Tyrogue is the baby Pokemon of every single hit Pokemon in the game: Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, and Hitmontop. This guy evolves into any one of those three, and I gave it the ability Fighting Pupil, very similar to Fighting Coach. That's what this ability was inspired by when I made it. It says if your active Pokemon's attack was increased, or is increased, double the amount that was increased. So basically the way this would work, and it'd be really cool, is if you have a Lucario on the field that boosts your attack by 20, if you also have Tyrogue, not only is it boosting it by 20, but now it's boosting it by a total of 40 instead, because it's doubling the amount that Lucario is boosting. If you're playing this in a deck outside of Lucario, if you play Red, then Red doesn't increase it by 20, it actually increases it by 40 against an EX Pokemon, because Tyrogue is on the field. Same thing with Giovanni. If Giovanni does it by 10, it's actually doing it by 20 because Tyrogue is on the field. So I think this would be a really cool and interesting effect to have in the game, and I actually haven't ever seen an ability like this in the game, so in the paper TCG that is, so I think it would be pretty cool. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And then we have Happiny, who does a very similar effect. I gave it a very similar style of effect as Tyrogue. This Happiny, by the way, is the baby Pokemon of Chansey and Blissey, and it says if your Pokemon is healed damage this turn, double the amount healed. So instead of doubling attack, we're doubling the amount of HP that we heal from our Pokemon. So if you guys watched part 1, and I encourage you to go do that, we had a Blissey EX who healed itself when it attacks for 20 damage. If this was on the field, it would actually heal it by 40 damage. And not only that, but if we played a potion, your potion would heal 40 instead of 20. If we played a Erica in a grass deck, Erica would actually heal 100 instead of 50, which would be absolutely insane. Again, with water, Irida would heal 80 instead of 40, because again, if one of your Pokemon healed damage this turn, double the amount healed. I think that would be really, really cool. And honestly, maybe even a little broken. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And then we have Igglybuff. Igglybuff is the baby Pokemon of Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, and it has the ability, I gave it the ability, a sing-along, which says your opponent must flip 2 coins to remove sleep. So as you know, at the beginning and end of all the checkups and all that stuff, when a Pokemon is asleep, they flip a coin to see if they get rid of it at the end of your turn and at the end of their turn. So it's very often they're flipping to get out of sleep, and it's a 50-50 every single time. Now you've stopped that 50-50 by forcing them to flip 2 heads. So they flip a heads, now they have to flip another heads. If they flip a tails, which means 1 heads, 1 tails, they're still asleep. So I think this would be pretty cool in very specific sleep decks. I also thought about making this for any coin flip where they have to flip double in order to remove or get something out, but I felt like it'd be way too broken. So I specifically did it to just sleep, because Jigglypuff is very commonly associated with putting sing and putting Pokemon to sleep. Same thing with Wigglytuff in the game as well. And then the last Pokemon, the last baby Pokemon we're going to look at is Munchlax, and this is my favorite one that will lead us into part 3. And so Munchlax, of course, is the baby Pokemon of Snorlax, and I gave it the ability EX Booster. And what does this do? I think this is one of the coolest abilities I've ever thought of. Trainer effects with Pokemon names in them also apply to EX versions. So what does that mean? So currently, right now, we have a Garchomp and a Garchomp EX. But Cynthia only works with Garchomp, not Garchomp EX. This card will allow Cynthia to work with Garchomp EX. And not only that, but in the next video, I have created a whole bunch of Pokemon whose names are on trainer cards or supporter cards in the game, such as Blaine, Koga, and things like that. So I have created a Rapidash and a Ninetales EX so that Blaine would work with them. And then I created a Muck and Weezing EX so Koga would also work with them, and so on and so forth. I'm going to do a Togekiss and stuff like that. Snorlax and Staraptor for Barry. So this will be very cool and interesting part 3. Let me know what you think of Munchlax. In my opinion, this is my favorite one I've ever built. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and share is what I'm trying to say. Join my Discord so you guys can post all your own custom cards so I can review them. And as always, keep cooking.